Hi, first and second grade. I hope you had a great week. We're back at it again this week with talking about texture. Texture is the way something feels to the touch or looks to the eye. So when you rub your hand down a brick wall or a stone path, you might be able to say that it feels rough or it feels bumpy. If you rub your hand on a blanket or look at a blanket, you might say it feels soft, it's smooth, it's fuzzy. Those are all ways to describe texture. So you are going to need a couple things this week. You're going to need at least 3 sheets of paper. You're going to need pencil, eraser, a scissors, crayons would be the best for this, not markers or colored pencils this time, crayons. Even big crayons, like if you have a younger brother or sister that uses those big fat crayons, those will be perfect. You're also going to need things that have texture. So look around your house and find things that have some texture when you rub your hands on them, because I'm going to show you what we're going to do with those, and I think you're really going to have fun with it. Find a couple different things, gather them all up, and I'll show you how we're going to put all this together. So what we're going to be doing is making a vase of flowers. Now these flowers are not just any flowers though. If you look really closely, you'll see each of the flowers has a different texture on the petals and even on the center of the flowers. The vase even has a texture. The way we're going to get that texture is by rubbing our crayon and paper over something with texture. So that's why I told you to grab a couple things with some texture to them. First thing you're going to need to do is take one of those pieces of white paper that you got, and you're going to fold it in half, almost like you're making a card for somebody. So fold it in half, open it up, fold it in half the other way, so you have 4 squares. What you're going to do then is just cut that apart. We're going to use this to get different textures in just a minute. Now on another sheet of paper, you're going to take it, fold it in half again like you're making a card. But before we open it and fold it the other way, I want you to cut it in half so that you have 2 pieces of paper this time. Because we need one of these to be a little bit bigger to make our vase. The other one, fold in half again like you're making a card, so that you have 2 more pieces of paper about the same size as those first 4 we made. So now you should have 1 larger size paper and 6 of these smaller sizes, of these smaller pieces, I mean. This is where all those things that you found that have texture are going to come in. So grab a bunch of different things together. Like I have this Lego block. I have a trivet that has some texture. I have this Domino's case that has a really rigid, rough texture to it. And what you're going to do is take a piece of paper, put it on top of the texture that you found. Take one of those crayons, and again, like I said, those really big fat crayons work great for this. Hold the paper still with one hand, and then with your other hand, color over it. And you want to fill pretty much the whole paper up. That way you can have some flexibility with how big you make your flowers in a little bit. Try and get as many different textures as you can. Go outside and grab the texture off of the tree bark, off of the stoop outside your door. If you have a brick wall in your house, get the texture from that. And just one by one, get as many different textures as you can. The texture I used for my vase on my example was actually off of a basket. I held the paper against a basket and was just very careful to make sure I didn't color on it. Whatever objects you use, make sure you try not to get crayon on them, because we don't want to ruin any of Mom or Dad's things. So just do this with a couple different things to get a bunch of different textures. So you should have all 7 pieces of paper filled with texture. If some of them are the same, that's fine. Just try and use different colors. So now I have all of my papers filled with textures. I have the 6 small pieces and I have the 1 big piece. The 1 big piece is going to be our vase. So what we're going to do is just fold it in half. So we're folding it horizontally like a banana split, not an ice cream cone. So we have a long skinny fold. And actually fold it so that the texture part is on the inside. What we're going to do is draw just half of our vase and cut it out. That way both sides will be exactly the same. It doesn't have to be the full size of the paper, but you want it pretty big because it's holding some pretty many flowers. So something like that. Just think about vases that you've seen that hold flowers before. It doesn't have to be a real difficult shape. If you want, you could just make it a rectangle. That works too. Cut that out. There's my vase. It looks like it has polka dots. And the next step is on these different colors of the smaller pieces, we're going to draw flowers. It's easier to do them on the back so you're not trying to draw and erase over the crayon. And you might want to keep 1 or 2 pieces to use for the centers of your flowers. So I'm going to keep the orange one for that. And I'm actually also going to keep one of the red ones, I think. On the back then, you're just going to start drawing some flowers. So I always start drawing a flower by drawing the center. So I draw a circle in the center. And then what you're going to do is draw petals. So some of the flowers might have longer pointy petals, almost like a daisy. And I draw one at the top, and then I go and draw one at the bottom, trying to make sure that they're all pretty much the same size. Some might be a little bit smaller, some might be a little bit bigger. Right now it looks like an airplane propeller. Then I go and add one on each side. And I draw one in between each of those. And there I have my flower. And like I said in other videos, if you start to get stuck, just stop the video, do whatever step I'm working on, and then start the video again. Just like if we were in the art room and I'd show you a step at my big table and then have you go back to your seat to do it, and then I have you come back up to show you the next step. Sometimes it's easier to break things down little by little. I just have everything together in a video so you can watch it as you're ready for it. So these petals are pointed, but if you want, you can do the same thing with rounded petals. They don't have to be pointed. So here's the same flower, but instead of making pointed petals, I made them more rounded. And it's still a flower, it just looks like a little bit of a different flower. So go ahead and draw a flower on each of the other papers. You should have at least 4 flowers, maybe 5, depending on how many you kept for the center. For the center of the flowers, you're going to want to find something that's round. So I have just a little cup here, but you can use a glue stick, anything you can find that's round. And on the back of these papers, all I'm going to do is trace the cup, and then this will be the center of my flower so that it sticks out a little bit more since it'll be a different color. So now I have the centers traced on 2 pieces of paper, and I also have flowers traced on the other 4. What I'm going to do now is just carefully cut everything out. When you cut the flowers out, I've already started cutting this one. You want to make sure that you don't cut where the petals overlap, because we don't want to cut any of the petals off. We want to keep the flower as whole as we can and make it nice and strong. So what we're going to do is just cut on the outside of the petals up to where they overlap and then stop. So a lot of the petals, you're only cutting the top half out so that they stay attached to the ones next to them at the bottom half. Now the circles for the center of the flowers, you're just going to cut out completely so you have a circle that will glue in the middle of our flower. So go ahead, cut all that out, and then we can start putting everything together. So now I have everything cut out. All I need to do is glue everything together. So I'm going to just take my glue stick, put some glue on the center for each flower, pop that in there. My flowers are, whoops, ready to go. Now I glued my flowers on, for the example, on a piece of blue paper. If you don't have blue paper or you don't have colored paper, just use a piece of white paper. Colored paper is fun, but if you don't have it, it's not necessity. Take your vase. You're gonna wanna put glue as close to the edge as you can, and then a little in the middle. And glue your vase so that the bottom of the vase is at the bottom of the paper. So that way you have enough room up top here for all your flowers. And just one by one, glue your flowers on. It's okay if they go over the edge of the paper. It's also okay if they overlap. But again, you want to make sure that you get as close to the edge on each petal as you can, because we don't want them popping up. Glue that on. And after you glue each flower on, take a crayon, or if you want to use a marker for this part, you can, and just draw a stem that goes into the vase. Then glue your next flower on. You might cover some of the stems with flowers, but that's okay. And then just as long as we can see the ones that are still popping out. So draw a stem for that flower. And again, these flowers might overlap. They might overlap the vase. That's quite all right. Glue that on. Glue my last one on here. Now, since these are touching the vase, I didn't draw a stem for them because they're kind of low, but that's all right. And there you have your vase of flowers. I hope you had fun making the flowers in the vase today. Little tip, Mother's Day is coming up, and I bet Mom would love if you wrote a nice little message here on the back, signed your name, and gave it to her for Mother's Day. Nice little surprise there for her. So have fun with this. See what kinds of textures you can come up with. Look all around the house. Look outside. Look inside. Look everywhere. Texture is everywhere. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of things. I would love to see what you did with these. So if you can send me a picture, I would love to see it. I've been loving all the projects you guys have been sending, the comic strips. Everything's been great. The landscapes last week were awesome. You guys are rocking these projects. So I would love to see it. Send me an email with a picture. Maybe I'll even get to see your face in the picture, and I'll see you next week.